did you see that Phoenix PD is getting sued again?
I did. This one. Ooh, boy, this looks really bad.
Yeah, I was listening to the boys on Outspoken. They were discussing the story here briefly, and the gist of it is there's a guy who's having trouble with his 16-year-old, which if you've ever had a 16-year-old, that's what you do. You have trouble with your 16-year-olds. Mm-hmm. He ended up calling the police because the 16-year-old was really misbehaving, and the parent was at their wit's end.
Yeah.
And every parent's been there.
Argument was kind of about a phone, I guess, right? Like dad bought the phone, but teenager was saying he was paying for the phone.
Yeah. So whose phone is it?
16-year-old is now 18, and he is the one, through his attorney,
that's
has filed a
$500,000
notice of claim.
Right.
So either give us $500,000 or we will sue you.
So what happened in between the kid's not behaving and the kid is suing for $500,000?
Well, the cops told dad that, quote, you drag him, you hit him, he's a child. He only has rights from the government. He has no rights from you, the officer is heard saying.
Huh.
He went on, so if you wish to beat him, you can beat him. If you wish to belt him, belt him.
Oh.
That doesn't sound good.
Huh. So the father was a little nervous about that, and the officer was like, hey, man, don't worry about it. Here's the quote. They can call child services, but if they see you're disciplining him, they'll throw it in the shredder. Mm-hmm. Oh. So the dad says, okay, I guess beatings ahoy. So then the officer went to talk to the young man himself.
That played out well. He told the 16-year-old at the time, your dad should beat you, the officers heard saying. Other than sending you to the hospital, your dad should beat you.
I mean, this is how I talk to my nephew.
What?
Yeah, I tell my nephew this all the time.
But you don't actually lay hands on him.
No, I tell him that his father should beat him.
But does dad do it?
Not in front of me. This is interesting, though. The officer did say something. Other than sending you to the hospital. Mm-hmm. So the officer's basically drawing a line, saying your dad can beat you to the point just shy of hospitalization. So then what did the officer do? Sent the kid to the hospital.
Yeah.
That's where the story gets a little more violent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm looking for it right here in front of me. The cops ended up taking the kid down to the ground, and they accused the kid of, what did they say?
Well, this has to do with the cell phone. So then they were still arguing about the cell phone. The cop said, give me the cell phone. He goes, no, it's my cell phone. I pay for the cell phone service, but evidently his father gave him the cell phone. So there's an argument over whose cell phone it is. So the cops say, no, you don't own anything. Your dad owns everything you own. Basically, and they try to take the cell phone away. So the kid goes, you can't take my phone, and he reaches back. Now, we got body cam footage that shows this.
Right, so the cop is seen on body camera footage grabbing the phone out of his hand, and the kid turns back towards the officer reaching for it. The cops take him to the ground and place him under arrest for aggravated assault.
In the process, they snap his wrist.
They say that the kid pushed them.
But the body cam footage doesn't really support that.
And lawyer says charges were filed but were eventually dropped. I'm guessing charges were filed by the cops, not charges by the kid, right?
Kid can't file charges.
Oh, right. Yeah. So the cops filed charges.
Yeah, I'm sure it was assaulting an officer.
And those charges were dropped.
By allowing your wrist to break too easily. Don't make that officer feel sad about themselves. Don't let your bones break so easily when they throw you down. It makes them feel really sad, and we don't want that. So, couple of things about this. First, not a great look for the Phoenix PD.
Not at all, especially in light of the use of force allegations that they're dealing with.
Yeah. But to their credit, I believe the kid was white and didn't have a disability. So, I mean, they're an equal opportunity rights offender.
That doesn't feel better.
The other thing is this. I feel like the Valley is very divided over the advice to beat your kid.
You think they're divided over that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. I don't think anybody's pro. Well, I don't think most are pro beating.
Oh, I do. Pablo.
I think he ran for the hills.
Grab that microphone.
You still here with us?
Pablo. How'd that chancla feel when you were a youngster?
It hurt. It stung.
Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It stung. You know what it also did?
What is that?
It corrected me.
Yeah, it built some character.
Yep.
Yeah. And now look at you. Working all day long. You're not even allowed to leave when the fire starts. Yep.
Your parents ever hit you?
They did. We had Peter Paddle.
So I got I got the hand one time by my dad, and it was pretty soft. He didn't whack me as hard as he could.
But now, Pablo, does Joe know how to change his own oil?
No.
Could Joe change his own tire?
Yes.
Oh, well, nice job on that.
I call AAA.
He done not on his own. No.
No. And who's his favorite artist?
Kesha?
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. This is why we have to smack the kids around a little bit every now and again. In Arizona, a parent, guardian, or teacher, or any other person entrusted with the care or supervision of a minor or incompetent person, debatable, may use, and I'm going to emphasize this, reasonable and appropriate physical force on a minor to the extent reasonably necessary and appropriate to maintain discipline.
That sounds very subjective.
I agree. Totally agree with you. As far as corporal punishment in the state of Arizona, I looked this up on the internets. And they talk about corporal punishment being legal so long as the person inflicting the discipline does not leave a visible mark on the child.
Okay, well, if you were sending them to the hospital, which again the cops said don't send them to the hospital.
Right.
So you definitely couldn't leave a mark there, but I think you could probably do some damage that wouldn't necessarily leave a mark that could still send a kid to the hospital.
Pablo, your parents ever leave a mark on you when they were disciplining?
Yes.
Yeah, that belt leaves welts, doesn't it?
Yes.
Especially when they use the buckle end.
I don't think they meant to, but one time it slipped. Yeah,
right?
The buckle end did hurt. Yeah.
Yes. So I think many of us grew up that way. There are good reasons not to do it, though, right? And I wanted to share that with you. And I'm not even going to get into the child rearing, good idea, bad idea thing. But some of you are screaming at your radio right now that, you spare the rod, you spoil the child, right? And then you've got others, like Joe, that are thinking, what kind of a cop tells parents how to beat their kid? Phoenix PD is totally messed up. And actually, I agree with that, too. Like, don't tell people to beat their children. At least pick better words. We were just discussing a Phoenix cop advising a father to beat his child. The cop then goes ahead and breaks the kid's wrist for good measure. Seems like that would be frowned upon. There are, however, I would contend, other times you may want to hold back your rage when it comes to your ratty kids. Joe, you said that your father only struck you once, and frankly, it was kind of soft.
I was a little kid, too. I was, I'm guessing maybe 4 or 5, and I was being a brat. I was at a restaurant. I wouldn't come out from under the table. My dad dragged me outside, and I remember there was this girl in the restaurant that my dad could overhear as he's dragging me outside, and she says, "What is that big mean man going to do to that sweet little boy?" And I went outside, and my dad said, "Joe, I'm going to have to spank you." I said, "I know." And he seriously probably took his hand and went like that.
He patted your butt.
I bawled. And I came back in.
But it was more emotional than it was physical pain, right?
I came back in and could not have been sweeter with my mom. "Hello, Mommy.
Hello.
I would like some of that nice cranberry juice and some of those chips."
You are Draco Malfoy in the...
But seriously,
in the flesh.
This is one of my biggest fears. I am not a parent yet. You are. But what do you do if your kid is totally out of control?
It is hard.
Like, because I mean, as much as you're saying, yes, Arizona does allow corporal punishment. Have you, you've never beaten your kid?
No, I wasn't allowed to spank the kids.
Oh, so you weren't even allowed to spank them.
So
I think there's a big difference between beating and spanking, too.
So, well, here's where things can get a little bit tricky. So I was reading some of the legal thoughts on the corporal punishment in Arizona. Yeah. And here's what I found from Woodnick Law. This is not from Rafi, so take it for what it's worth.
No.
I've never seen a Woodnick Law billboard, so I don't know. Maybe they just don't have the kind of credibility.
What did he say?
During a period of high conflict like a divorce or custody proceeding, it may be wise for parents or guardians to use non-physical forms of punishment to avoid the risk of child abuse allegations and to minimize further tension during the proceedings. Additionally, third parties should never assume the role of disciplinarian, especially if they're not the parties involved in an ongoing family law proceeding. So you also have to be careful with this. Even if acting as a disciplinarian, a parent's significant other or another non-parental family member may still open themselves up to criminal charges of child abuse. So when I got together with my wife, she was recently divorced, 3 kids. I told you that I married an old lady with 3 used kids.
Had she ever paddled them?
Yeah, they got spanked. She could swat them.
Okay.
Yeah. She didn't, though, because, at least after we got together, because you know how divorces can get if he ever lays a finger on my kid, I'll put him behind bars for blah, blah, blah. So we had that kind of nonsense going on. So what it did is it took away that tool for me as a parent. I wasn't allowed to because I didn't want to have to deal with that.
So you just screamed at him.
I did. I'm not saying that was great, but I did.
I mean, you're a big guy, too. You can be intimidating to some people.
It made me be more creative.
Oh.
So I would take things away. My daughter as a teenager, she did, and some people think that this is torture. She lost her door for a week. It was terrible.
Can you share what she did that merited
I don't remember.
that? Okay.
Whatever it was. Yeah, I don't even remember.
But you took the door right off the hinges.
Door was gone. Yeah, I know she had snuck out a couple of times, so maybe that was the reason that we did the door thing. But then there was one time that my youngest son, who's now 25, he didn't want to go to bed, and he was gonna put on a show, and he was gonna start crying because I said, "You get your butt in that bed right now. You can't yell at me." And I go, "Oh, we're gonna cry? We're gonna cry?" I said, "I'll tell you what. Get down those stairs right now." And of course, I'm a big guy, scary, right? So I hollered at him to run down the stairs, and I took him into my wife's office at the time where I could close the door. I said, "You want to cry? I want to hear it." And I put him in the corner. I said, "You better keep crying." Now I threatened to spank him. I didn't.
How old is he at the time?
Let me see. I'm going to say 5 or 6.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I said, "I want to hear you crying. You better get crying, and I better not hear you stop." And so then I left, and I closed the door, and he's screaming, "Wah! Wah!" He's crying. Well, I go back upstairs to tuck his older brother and sister in, and I can hear, "Ah! Ah! Ah!"
He's kind of getting tired.
And I go, "I can't hear you! Ah! Wah!" And then he's just, he was faking it to start with. He was putting on a show to start with. So then I was like, "You better." So after about, I don't even think it was 5 minutes.
Mom wasn't home for that, was she?
No. She's been around. She supported me. After about 5 minutes, I went down there. I go, "We done?" He goes, "Yeah." "You want to go to bed?" "Yes." "Okay." Off you go. I'm not saying that what I did instead of spanking was good. I've always said I was a bad parent. Just a bad parent. I love my kids. I did the best I could. I'm not saying I was a good parent. I will never say that. But not being able to spank my kids, not being able to beat my kids, as the Phoenix police officer said, it forced me to do 2 things. 1, be more creative in my discipline. 2, it forced me to maintain control. Because the times that I found myself wanting to hit the kids, in retrospect, were the times that I lost control and had no other avenue. I didn't know of anything else. And I also know that that's what happened with our parents. Your dad said, "I have to spank you." He didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I was raised that way. I didn't know what else to do. It forced me to do something different than what my parents did. And I'm not criticizing my parents.
I think I wasn't there for it, but based on what I know about you, I think you were a good parent.
I'm pretty terrifying.
Let me ask you this. You're pretty terrifying or terrified?
Terrifying.
Okay.
Oh, it's scared every day that I'd screw him up.
Looking back on it now, guy in his mid-40s, do you think you had their respect then? And did you respect them?
I know that...
Or did they just fear you?
Well, and that was where I had to be very careful. So I always, on the backside of this, is that I wasn't afraid to use intimidation.
Because that's the tough thing, too. Being a 6-foot guy who's, 200 plus pounds, even without trying to be intimidating, you can be.
But then what I wanted to do was marry any sort of discipline or intimidation that I had, marry that with love on the other side. So I remember that my oldest, when he was a teenager, he got in trouble for, I don't know, something at school. Teacher said he was acting up. I don't remember what it was. But I told him, obviously, I have failed you as a parent. "No, you haven't. No. I go, "I have, because we would not be in this position had I not parented you better. So I need to spend more time with you." So what I learned, accidentally, was that the punishment I was giving him to spend more time with me, and I told him, "We're going to do some projects. We're going to paint the deck. We're going to build a garden," this sort of thing. That was actually a lot of the acting out was, and I didn't realize it at the time. I stumbled upon it. He just needed more attention. He did need more parental guidance. But I think he needed some more real role model.
Maybe a lesson for Chris and a lesson for your kid.
It was a huge lesson for me, yeah. But my point is, when it comes to people that are like, "You got to beat the kid," I'm really hesitant to that, because oftentimes from my own experience, the moments that I've wanted to hit my children, I know, are the moments that I was at my wit's end and was losing control of myself, right? So
I think there can be some merit in an occasional spanking,
Whooping?
things like that. But
Yeah.
when you hear that word beating, I think that goes beyond a spanking or a paddling. Beating, to me, you're talking about leaving a mark and doing permanent damage.
Yeah, what about the whole go get a switch?
Yeah.
Did you ever have that? I had a teacher teach us about it. She never did it, but she told us what it was.
No, thank you.
No, man, no. It never got abusive.
Never got the whole get a switch.
No, but you know what my thing was? Like, the anticipation of it hitting your butt.
The worst.
Right, Chris?
Yeah.
You're right. You're like, do I, I'm clenched for it now?
Relax.
But sometimes dad does the delay, and then bam!
Oh, that's good. If it were me, I would like cough just to me, as I'm getting ready to wind up, just excuse me, whack, right?
To me, that was most scarier than getting hit.
Well, I think that's why Joe said he was crying at the restaurant. It wasn't that it hurt; it's that it was terrifying.
Yep.
Thanks for watching the Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe, and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.